Hello, I'm Charles Clausen, your host of the AMPx Podcast, a show where we engage in conversations with entrepreneurs and innovators whose wild ideas and exponential thinking are reshaping the universe where we live, play, and work. I believe these powerful conversations will inspire you to pursue your dreams. This is our second interview with Mitchell Hora. Our first one was on the details of regenerative agriculture and all the nuances of cover crops and no-till and biomes and earthworms and water retention and all the science that's really behind modern farming, which I find fascinating. Yeah. When you actually get out into a field day with Mitchell or Mitchell's dad, and you walk through the fields and see what they're doing in agriculture, it's amazing. And it's the way of the future, and it's the only way as humans we'll have sustainability in agriculture, because the till and just bombarding the earth with billions of pounds of nitrogen is not sustainable. So we've been doing it for generations, and now it's time to change. So this episode, we're going to focus on Mitchell's journey as an entrepreneur with Continuum Ag. Yeah. In the prior episode, he talked about his childhood entrepreneurship as a 4-year-old starting out, and so I think this is going to be exciting because he's learned a lot over the last 7.5 years or so. So I hope to inspire our audience to try to build new things and also learn from some of Mitchell's lessons. So I think, you might kind of summarize what your mission is, and we can talk about the key lessons learned along the way, and now what your key, your 3 or 4 major initiatives are. Then we'll talk about some of the issues with staffing and getting the right people in the right places, and empowering people and holding them accountable and being a CEO and letting go, trying to let go.
Trying to.
So I just asked you about 5 questions, so I'm going to let you talk.
Great. The kind of tee it up, and especially on the entrepreneurship piece. Again, I'm an entrepreneur for sure, and I know my passion is ag and my niche is ag, and I've grown up knowing nothing but ag, and my first word as a baby was corn. So if it's not my destiny, I don't know what is.
You walking around the house,
corn, yeah. So so Continuum Ag is my main company. We're going to talk about that, but I've got a farm. I'm 7th generation on my family's farm, and my personal farm entity is called MT Hora Farms. So I've got that. We do podcasting and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily, it's not its own business, but it's a big endeavor that I've got, podcasting and speaking. I own just a building holding company that we bought a commercial building for my wife's company, which is a dance company, a dance studio for 2 to 18-year-olds for the most part, down in Fairfield, Iowa. So we've got the dance company, and there I've got a different holding company, controls my interest in Continuum Ag, and then a bunch of other things, and we're working on lots of different stuff. Okay. But Continuum Ag, I'm technically the founder and CEO, but really my role is visionary, and we've been very much using the EOS system to build systems in the company and to have processes and a system to go off of. So EOS is the Entrepreneur Operating System. It was developed based on a book called Traction, and it has an online platform that we utilize. We do annual, quarterly, and weekly goal setting. We track metrics on a weekly basis. We track milestones that go towards our quarterly and our annual goals, and really just trying to have a system to building the company. Continuum Ag today is 25 employees, and that's spread across a couple different countries and multiple states. So in order to manage all this and keep everyone going in the right direction, we got to have systems, and processes, and I've got to help to provide the vision. And my COO, Brad, is the integrator that helps to make sure it all gets done.
So Brad's been with you 18 months, maybe a year?
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years already. Wow. So when Brad came in 2 years ago, so we're looking somewhere early 2020.
Yeah.
You were still somewhat undisciplined in terms of processes, if I recall correctly.
Very much.
So tell us how you, with a process operating guy, how you orchestrated that and how you worked together to guide him through creating the EOS objectives and key results and build the metrics to get the 25 people focused. Because 2 years ago, I'm thinking you had 5-6 people maybe.
Yeah.
If I remember.
Besides like some of the software folks and all that. So, and actually now that I'm thinking about it, I think Brad actually came on as a contractor in late 21, late summer of 2021, came on full time in right at the first of this year, first of 2020.
So he's really been full time less than a year.
Less than a year, right? Basically right out of a year. So he's been there since then, and Brad came in as the COO, and like I said, that integrator kind of role. And Brad does have experience in entrepreneurial companies, in building and exiting from companies, and is just a math processes guy. He's a Excel spreadsheets and a linear type of thinking guy, which is great for a COO. He's a get it done in the process, track the metrics, learn from the data. Great for that role. It's perfect spot for him. And Brad's a farmer as well. And most of my team is either grew up on family farms or their families are directly involved in farming. But yeah, so basically being able to utilize these folks that can help to figure out processes and systems. And what we've really had to learn better about is setting the right goals, setting real, attainable, smart goals, and then reverse engineering those goals to put together milestones and determine what is it going to take to make sure that we get the goals done and keep things on track. And we don't always do it perfect every time, for sure, but we've gotten significantly better. And actually in our year, when we set our annual goals a year ago, we've actually been able to really nail them, which is very exciting to see. That the things that we said that we were going to get accomplished in this 2022 year, we got accomplished, which is really great.
So in prior years, the prior 6 years, did you even have annual goals? Did you know what you wanted to do, or were you just chasing a dream and trying to figure out what that dream was?
We were chasing dreams. We had the goals. Put together, but we just didn't have good processes and systems to actually attain the goals. We knew what we wanted to get done. We had ambition to get these things done, or at least I said, hey, here's what we want to do, but there wasn't any follow through and any processes to get it done. So from the very beginning, the good thing that I did do when I started hiring employees was I found the EOS program. And the story on that was, so I graduated from Iowa State in the spring of 2017. Already had the company up and going, but I was a one-man show. My younger brother was in high school, and he got strong-armed into helping me, and and that was it. But it was a small consulting company, and no big deal. I was in a peer group of sorts through a group called EO. EO is the Entrepreneurs Organization. It's a global initiative, lots and lots of chapters globally. And to be an EO member, you have to be a business owner with a business doing at least $1 million a year in annual revenue. Really, really cool organization. In 2017, I got recruited into kind of their accelerator program. At the time, it was called the EO Fellows program, because I knew some of my buddies that I ran in the same circles with at Iowa State and such. They were in the program. They recruited me in, and that's where I got connected with one of the guest speakers at one of the meetings. Was a guy that did this EOS program, and I said, I need to figure out working with this guy and making sure that we've got some systems here. If I'm going to hire on employees, I knew that I needed to do it with some structure. The problem was we started in the EOS program, and I remember the first day that we were out and did our first meeting with the whole team. It was my one guy's first day on the job, and my gal was still at Iowa State, wasn't even a full-time employee yet, so she technically hadn't even started. And that was our first EOS like meeting and annual planning meeting. Was our first day on the job. So I didn't have any real vision put together. We didn't have enough data to have processes and metrics and stuff. And what I needed to have done was figure out, what are we selling? What's the metrics behind it? What's the process and how we get it done? And I knew how to do it, and I was making pretty decent money actually. I made pretty good money in that first year of coming out of Iowa State, because all I did the whole time was just sell, and I was pretty decent at it, and it was a cool new thing, and I was getting a lot of my customers on board, people that
So you were selling agronomy
services.
services.
Selling just soil sampling, agronomy services, but it was a soil health sampling thing, and it was different and new and intriguing, and we were just going like crazy, and I knew that I needed more help to get it done. My first full-time hire was to help do marketing, because I'm a marketing-minded person and knew, okay, we need some marketing people to help to scale this thing all up, and I hired an agronomist as well. And I thought that the marketing was going to help with sales, and I thought the agronomist was going to be able to go and be kind of a hunter-gatherer and go get some more sales as well. And that is not the case at all.
Didn't work so well?
No. But the problem was he didn't necessarily know what he was selling, and we didn't have we help farmers make $100 an acre in reducing their inputs, and we didn't have those case studies. We didn't have the systems put together. We didn't have a process to show a farmer, here's what we're selling you. I could talk about it, and I could get them to write me a check, because I knew them already, and they had enough trust in me, and they were intrigued, and they said, yeah, sure, we'll help you out and get you going and be involved in this. It looks cool. But other people can't necessarily do that the same way that the founder can do it. So really needed to build processes and systems. We've been able to get that dialed in much more. I still think we have plenty far to go, but now we know that it's a much more well-oiled machine, and I can be out on the road, and I can be out doing things, and work will still get done, and value will still be created without me having to be part of getting the work done.
Let's talk a little bit about the evolution of the innovation of your product services, because I think you've gone through a series of dozens of small steps on what your product service offering is going to be, and you keep trying things and you learn, but it's a quick evolution of you try things, you put them out there, and tell us about that process and kind of where it's taken you and what the key learnings were along the way.
Yeah, at the beginning, I started the company selling this agronomic tool called the Haney Soil Health Test, and the only disruption to it was a small disruption, and it was a service company, not supposed to be this big disruptive technology company. All it was that usually farmers collect some soil from their agronomist at the ag retail location that sells them the inputs. The ag retailer typically comes out and pulls soil samples. These soil samples are done in a linear grid pattern, and they're sent to a lab, and they do a traditional chemical analysis on the data. And then the ag retailer gets that data back and tells you, here's how much fertilizer you need. And they spread it, and you just get a bill. We said, let's use zones to evaluate the spatial variability of the field and utilize, at that point it wasn't machine learning yet, it was just looking at the field variability. And let's use this Haney soil health test to not only look at chemistry, but also look at biology and have a little bit of a niche. That was my differentiator. And I was trying to deliver that service back to the grower, and writing very long email reports and utilizing an Excel spreadsheet and some basic analytic tools to deliver the product. It took a lot of time. One farmer to do their analysis and to write the recommendation to all this. I mean, if you could get 2 farmers done in a day, that'd be probably pretty good.
That was the sampling and the reports and
That
everything?
was just the reports and all
Just
that.
the reports.
I suppose with sampling and stuff too. I mean, sampling, the speed has gotten a little bit better, but for the most part, it's usually around 100 acres per hour is kind of what one sampler can get done in a typical Iowa geography. Mm-hmm. But I would take a lot of times on the analytics. And I was the only one that knew how to read these reports and how to create some value off of it, but I was delivering the value in a written email for the most part.
Which they weren't so interested in.
Which they weren't interested in. They didn't want to read it. It was still so complex and so much data, and it was hard for them to follow what I was trying to say.
Right.
And they were looking at the data just as an Excel file. So I knew we needed to deliver a better system, and there was not existing technology today to be able to deliver these reports, and we were still scaling and growing the company and had a lot of data and a lot of interest in this space. And I got connected with a software developer through one of my employees. Now thinking about it, so one of my employees at the time, it was like his wife's, or I guess his girlfriend at the time, I think his girlfriend's dad knows this guy who's a software developer, kind of thing. And I got connected with that guy. He helped me to start building some software completely from scratch. Started it as a different company at the time.
Was that Kay?
Nope. This guy's name was Seth.
Oh, okay.
So Seth was the guy, and from Iowa. And so Seth helped basically building a database type of system and some basic data analytics and tools. It had no mapping to it, no visual. And but that's when I started looking down, raising some venture capital. Started a new company. It was called Soil Reporting and Management LLC. Mm-hmm. That was going to own the software, and Continuum Ag was going to be the service company, consulting company. The software was going to be over here. And I started a new company called Continuum Enterprises that was going to own my shares in each one of them.
Okay.
So 2 customer-facing companies, one holding company that owned my interest, and then I'd bring in a investor that could invest in the software company. Because the plan at that point was build up a software solution and maybe get it acquired or spin it off or whatever, and then I'd just do consulting again after that. Because again, at this point, I thought I was just going to do consulting for forever. And now, okay, yeah, we could build a software and build a database system, but probably, do the entrepreneurial route, get investors and sell that thing and be done. Well, very quickly learned that having these 2 companies, that was very hard to differentiate between what's what. It was very hard to know, where does revenue go? Where does payroll come out of? How do taxes work? What is the investor investing in? It was a mess. And it wasn't too long after that you and I first met. And you saw one of my initial pitches because of some some friends and business colleagues down in Southeast Iowa. And I don't even know what I was pitching at the beginning, and you didn't know what I was pitching, and nobody knew what I was pitching at the beginning because it was such a mess.
But I was intrigued, and we got together and it actually visioned another company that we're not going to talk about today.
That's a different thing. So the opportunities in ag, there is opportunities there, but now we've been able to figure out that Continuum Ag and our solution has to be a more simplified business model, and I still have to continue to really simplify things because I use too much fancy terminology and trying to utilize these big words and make it sound all techy and fancy, and it convolutes things, and I should simplify it. And at one point we were saying, we've really been pushed on, we're the catalyst for sustainable agriculture and all this stuff. Really, our tagline today is we are soil health simplified, which is so much better, so much easier. Soil health simplified.
Yeah, well, that's
simple.
You've come a long way. Stuff. So when did AI and machine learning start to come into the whole product offering?
Yep. So I hired Seth to help build software. He brought in a UI UX, so the user interface, and a design gal named Joni. Joni's a software designer from out in LA, zero connection to agriculture whatsoever. But she is, I call her a mind reader. She can take what I'm thinking and how I want to kind of visualize stuff when I'm not a software designer.
Turn it into code.
And no, she turns it into the visuals, and then the developers can turn it into code and make it real. But because she's from outside of agriculture, we've designed a system that doesn't necessarily look like all the other ag softwares, which is what would have happened if we would have hired people from ag, because how I was thinking about laying out the software would have looked like any other ag software.
So does Joni's visualization give the farmers better insight and easier ability to understand it?
Yeah, it's just easier, more simplified, more techy, more modern, and just easier to understand, because she's coming from outside of ag and she's like, just click here, done. Like, make it really simple. We at some point there finally got my business partner and investor Mike on board, and he wrote me my first investor check, which didn't come in until late 2019. So from 2015 through 2019, I built all this with zero investor money, zero outside capital. I had some money coming from the bank, just a line of credit at the bank, and revenue. That was it. And it was
so you had to generate cash to fund the ongoing product development,
including software development, everything, all coming from revenue and developing cash. Mike came in with some small investment dollars. We went through a ag tech accelerator program called Ag Launch, and upon graduation of that, tapped into some additional investment dollars about a year. So that would have been early 2020. We launched the software.
So let's pause for a second and talk about, the venture capitalists and these accelerators provide tremendous value and insight if you're willing to do the work. So tell us where you started with Ag Launch and the process they took you through and what you kind of learned from that experience.
Yeah, so Ag Launch was really, really great, and definitely, a group that I still work very closely with. Ag Launch is a nonprofit ag accelerator based in Memphis, Tennessee. And I got connected with Ag Launch because after graduating, I went through that EO Fellows program. And then I forget how I got connected with Spencer, and you've met Spencer right. Stensrud, and the Ag Ventures Alliance is now one of our investors as well. And Spencer's a farmer from northern Iowa, and Spencer got me in a different program through the Papa John Centers. So before I did Ag Launch, I went through Papa John Venture School up in Mason City because I wanted to connect with Spencer because I was chasing investment dollars.
So instead of doing it in Iowa City, you did it in
Mason City.
For proximity to Spencer.
Because Spencer was going to be part of my mentor and stuff. The Papa John Venture School program is really great, and I know you've been involved in some of that. I think it's an awesome program for companies that are just getting started, that are a basic idea concept. We were by far the furthest along in the cohort. We were actually making money. We had a business. Yeah, I was by far the furthest along, and I did it up in Mason City, driving 2.5 hours one way once a week for like 8 weeks, and it was on Tuesdays. I remember I would drive my pickup from Washington, Iowa to Mason City, 2.5 hours one way, do the couple-hour course, and then drive home after and get home at midnight or so. And did that for 8 weeks straight. But because of going through that, we were able to hone in on our system a little bit and hone in on our pitch and all that and try to communicate where people could understand what the heck am I talking about with all this crap. And Spencer connected me with the Ag Launch program. We went through that. It's a 5-week in-person program in Memphis.
So you were sequestrated for 5 weeks in Memphis, where you're showing up every day in the morning and then leaving late at night, and you worked on your business plan.
In Memphis. So I drove down there on Sunday evenings, and I was living with my buddy Christoph, who is also now on my advisory board. But Christoph is a founder at Nori, one of the original carbon companies. And Krista and Nori and Continuum Ag went through the program together for a very strategic reasoning. And we're both very early at the time. And Christoph and I actually lived together while we were in Memphis and rented like an Airbnb together. It was a nasty place, but it worked great. The cheapest place we could find, and it was awesome because we were just working the whole time anyway. It didn't matter. But Memphis is about 8-hour drive for me, so I would drive down there on Sunday afternoons, work down there the whole time, and we'd have events in the evenings and stuff. I mean, it was early morning till well after dark, all day, every day.
So what was the nature of the work you did over this 5.5 weeks?
So it was business planning, pitching, like pitch preparation. It was all about preparing for investors for the most part.
So you did a complete business plan. You did the business case, the product offering, the financials, the forecast, the capital requirements, what you need to support cash flow.
That's right. Yep. So it's all about getting ready for business pitch and stuff. And but then because at the end of the accelerator is a pitch event to the investors and all that. And all of the company, to be selected to go through Ag Launch, there's a farmer panel that selects the companies that go through Ag Launch. And upon graduating from Ag Launch, the nonprofit accelerator Ag Launch themselves, they get a safe note in the company. It's one of the investment documents or an investment vehicle. So they get a safe note of investment.
Is that like a convertible note that
like
converts to equity?
Note. Exactly. The difference between a safe and a convertible is a convertible note has an interest rate and a maturity date on it. A safe note doesn't. A safe note just has a cap, and whenever it converts...
When you get there and you trigger it, then it...
That's right. It's triggered based on the amount of money that you raise or an exit or whatever. But it's just a little more simplified.
Well, I mean, at that point in time, what was your target raise? What were you thinking that you needed in capital once you finished the 5.5 weeks?
Didn't even necessarily have one at that point. Well, I guess at that point we raised about $250,000. So
at the end of the program, you raised $250,000.
$250,000. Yep. So $250,000, and then about a year later, we raised about $500,000 on convertible notes.
So at that point, what was the allocation of the investment of the $250,000? What were you going to use it for?
It was all on software stuff.
So it was all product development.
All product
development.
There was
no operations funding. It was all.
No, might have been, within like the agronomy stuff, but for the most part, agronomy, operations, people, this kind of stuff. I had the revenue coming in from my legacy business.
So the business was cash flowing. So this was just to fund the development of the software.
Yeah. This is just to fund the software, and it's basically what we still do today. We've continued to significantly grow our revenue, and so if I wasn't building software, wasn't spending ongoing money on building software, we'd have a very profitable company right now, as I sit here today. But we still want to keep building more.
Well, you mean your cash flow from operations is positive. The product development sucks up the cash. So you have a profitable business, then you have a development activity that.
Oh yeah.
Do you capitalize all those development costs? Does it go on your balance sheet? Or do you just expense it?
It's just expenses for right now. Now we are tracking, of course, everything within the value, but we're still at early enough stage company that we don't necessarily say we are worth X dollars per share. We haven't quite gotten to that yet. We are looking at doing that here very soon by doing an actually priced equity investment raise of somewhere between $2.5 to $5 million. Raise that now.
So you raised $250, then a year later you raised $500, and these were all just so the first we called like a pre-seed, and then like a bridge round, and so now we're calling it more like a seed Series
round.
A.
This is more like a seed. It's kind of a late seed.
So you're not to a Series A yet.
Well, so all this is just terminology of how do you communicate it with
you're on your third rate. Well, actually your fourth, because you had your initial investor, $250,000, $500,000. Now you're looking for $2 to $5 million.
That's right. So but this round, because the use of funds is still mostly product development and sales and marketing and legal stuff and things like that, because the use of funds is towards those things, I call it a late seed round. Versus a Series A would be all the salespeople and major scale up and major go to market, which we still have some of that, but because we're still building some product and stuff, slightly earlier stage than just a Series A. So, but basically equity round, and that'll clean up everything. We're able to utilize some state non-dilutive, some state funding and stuff as well, and just tap into a variety of different initiatives. But yeah, working with lots of different investors out there. The space as we sit today has very much slowed down. It's very odd talking with investors today. A ton of interest in the sustainability space, at least, and that's what's very much keeping us relevant.
I mean, is this slowed down because of the economic uncertainty and the interest rates and the war in Ukraine and just all of the chaos in the world, and people are just more cautious and trying to sit on cash?
That's right. Yep. So just sitting on cash, and the big thing that we keep hearing from investors as we sit today is, very interesting, want to do something in this space. Let us know when you get a term sheet put together, and then we can talk some more. Well, that term sheet is basically, comes from a lead investor who puts a valuation on the company and is able to say, yep, your company is worth whatever, say, $25 million.
Right.
Your company's worth $25 million. We will put in X amount of money or whatever into that company. And after we put in our money, the company's going to be worth now the initial amount plus the money that we just put in. That's the new valuation. And we have whatever percentage based on that valuation. And getting a company to take the lead when there's all this uncertainty, and when we're in a weird, kind of late seed, early A, and because of how much we're raising, we're in another weird in-between kind of spot. So been interesting to navigate, and looks like we'll be able to have stuff.
Or are you still in a spot where the operating cash flow continues to fund it? So if you just don't do the raise, then you just slow down the development of the software. Is that kind of how that looks?
That's basically how it is. We could continue to just kind of bring on follow-on investment as well from the investors that we already have, not dilute myself any more than what I have to, not bring on other folks onto the cap table, and at that point not have to bring anyone else into a board seat either. So, because my board today is still just me and Mike, my angel investor. That's it.
Yep.
Our cap table and all of our systems is extremely clean.
So, just so our audience understands, you have a board of directors, which are the legal directors, which are you and Mike.
The shareholders.
Then you have a fairly extensive advisory board of experts that brings in all kinds of advice, and I know when we get together, ideas. And you might take a minute and talk about the importance of your advisory board in helping you as an entrepreneur grow and learn, and their proximity and connections, and how has that helped you, Mitchell?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit in the previous episode here, but yeah, so you've been able to be part of that advisory board, and it's a big thing that I've talked a lot about, and I have it now as one of my rocks for this quarter and one of my actual written goals, that I have to now create some structure and some systems within the advisory board and the rest of my department meetings and stuff like that. So because of how we funded the company, that it's safe notes and convertible notes, the investors that we brought in, except for Mike, my original angel investor, everyone else's shares in the company are not actual shares. They're future shares in the company. They're not actually votes. They're not actually common stock shares in the company.
So you still have a lot of freedom, whereas if you brought in a venture capitalist 5 years ago, you would own significantly less, and they would be controlling a lot of decisions.
So I control all the actual vote today. I have complete autonomy in terms of the votes and in terms of the shares of the company to do whatever I want to do. Now, I consult with Mike, who owns a significant portion and does have a vote, but
he has a vote, but you can override.
He just doesn't have enough votes.
Right.
but and we work very well together. Mike is a very experienced entrepreneur and somebody that I trust extremely within this. But in order to get other folks that have a solid interest and to try to create a little bit more acting like a bigger company, I put together an advisory board with some of those other investment groups and with other just supporters. So folks that are involved in the technology, folks like you from the business side, and there's maybe 9 or 10 people now on that. So it's a little bit big, but that's why I need to create better structure to it, have a little bit more systems so that it can be smooth and effective. And it's one of the things I am worst at is asking for advice, or not asking for advice, but asking for help and utilizing advisors and helpers around me. Because and I think it's part of my
Is that because you're so busy you don't even have time to pause and think?
That's part of it. Because I'm running and gunning so hard and fast that I just make the decision, or I don't make a decision, then it never gets made, which is the problem. But I think it's also just part of my farmer mentality. Of farmers, we're used to just doing our own thing and
figure it out. Doing it.
Yeah. There's nobody else that's going to do it, so you got to do it yourself and figure it out, which is bad as a leader. That I need to delegate. I need to utilize resources around me, especially for folks that have said, "Hey, I want to help you," and I need to let them help me. But it's been one of the biggest barriers, and in order to force me to do it, I have to put these meetings on the calendar to force it to happen.
When we have the meetings, there's great conversation.
It's always amazing.
And they're great connectors because they introduce you to people.
Yeah.
And I think, this is part of the evolution of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Some never make it. They refuse to bring on advisory board members. And you've got a big one with 9 people, and you've got some real horsepower on that board, and all you have to do is pick up the phone and ask them, and they'll. That's right. You and I talk.
Yeah.
It goes in spurts depending on where you want to raise and what the next strategy is. But I think,
and that's how
you can get a lot more from leveraging it.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and we haven't had this conversation yet, but we can start it now. At some point, you're an entrepreneur right now, but you're an operator, and you make 80-90% of the decisions, and your arms are rolled up, and you're in the midst of everything.
Yeah.
At some point, when you get more strategic and you can start thinking of yourself as an owner-investor instead of an owner-operator, then you start thinking about, okay, here's the strategy, here's the structure, and here's how I can get the good people. And so I can be the visionary.
That's right.
I can go out and do the pitches.
That's right.
I can raise the next $5 million, because when you get in front of audiences, you do great.
Yeah.
Tell our audience about your recent experience in Amsterdam, where you showed up in another continent. And tell us what that was, and tell us what you walked away with.
So I'll get into that story, but first, on what you were just saying, in terms of settling into the CEO role, is the biggest thing that I really need to do and need help on and need to work on very diligently, because I've got a lot of crap going on. And Continuum Ag is one company. My farm, my family farm, my wife's business is really crazy. We've got other business ventures. We got other things. There's a lot going on. And if I'm not going to fully be just the CEO, and if I'm going to be in as an operator and all these things, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to attain the goals. It's not going to work correctly. People are going to get burned out. People aren't going to be able to go, and it's just not going to work correctly. So that's the biggest thing that I need to do, is just be the CEO, to work for my employees, not try to be the one that's making all the decisions and all that, just letting things work and putting the right people in the right place to succeed.
Well, you know what you need, Mitchell? You need a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric Schmidt at Google,
Yeah.
Steve Jobs at Apple, they had coaches.
Yeah,
they had a coach. They each had one coach. They had the same coach. But, everyone needs a coach.
Yeah.
And at some point you need a kick in the ass, and you kind of say, okay, Mitchell, here's where you are, here's what you need to do. And, the nice thing about a coach is they help you define where you want to focus.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't do it. They help you, and they help you see options.
Yeah.
Then a coach holds you accountable to do it.
Yep.
So, I mean, an
And
advisor and a consultant, they give you advice and they try to teach you. A coach is more like a coach of a basketball team. You're actually coaching, or you're holding the CEO accountable
Yeah.
to build the team, get the right people in place to make sure you have the goals. Because if you have all of your direct reports with clear objectives and key deliverables and are measurable, your organization is going to get a lot more done.
That's right.
And, in this day and age, people want to be part of something that has a vision and a purpose, and impacting 1 billion acres and 1 million farmers is a big vision.
Yeah.
But they want to know what you want them to do and how you're going to hold them accountable. Then they want you to get the hell out of the way and let them do it.
Exactly.
So, and that's part of the entrepreneurial evolution is to become, a leader, and you have to grow. I mean, you started when you were 4 as an entrepreneur in the lemonade stand, but, it never stops.
Yeah. And it's what I know I really need to do, and what I've found in business is there's not that many people who are visionaries and who think the way that I think and who can see things from the angle that I see things, especially within the things that I know, ag and stuff. But so I know that I need to do more, and I need to be out of the way and not be a hindrance to the things getting done, and I need to be that CEO role and really go into that. And part of it, back to the Amsterdam thing, like you were saying, that this Amsterdam deal was we applied for a contest, a pitch competition, at a conference that was to be held in Amsterdam called the Regenerative Ag and Food Systems Summit, and was interested in this event because the lineup was really stacked. But I mean, we were referred to apply for this program. Brad did all the work, and we got chosen as one of the top 5. And I was like, well, this looks like a pretty slick deal. I've never been to Europe before, and I work very closely with Rabobank, who happens to be headquartered in the Netherlands as well, not that far from Amsterdam, down the road in Utrecht. So I said, okay, let's utilize this conference as a way to get over there, spend a week of it, and really get a bunch of work done and such. So went all the way over to Amsterdam to do a 5-minute business pitch. We were one of 5 companies. We were the only U.S. company that was chosen to the final 5. And I gave a 5-minute business pitch, answered some questions. The audience voted on who the winner would be, and we won. And now part of that, I know as well that I'm not just a visionary and want to be more of a leader, but I can talk pretty well.
You have a good story.
I've got a story, and I can be compelling. So I know that in these things, when it's me up on stage versus everyone else, I'm going to win.
And that was actually part of this for 7 years. You've done your pitch hundreds of times.
Oh, for tons of times. But also that was one of the pieces of feedback that was given. I was the second one to give my pitch. The first group was an Asian company that stood behind the podium and kind of gave their script and cool technology, but it was a bad pitch. And I go, hey, I didn't want to stand behind a podium. I hate standing behind a podium because
you like to wave your arms
all the time. Yeah, I'm going, and I get too excited to just stand behind a podium. So I asked him for a handheld mic, and I got the handheld mic, and instead of standing on the podium off to the side, I got right out front and center on that stage, right out on the edge of it, and was talking in these people's faces. So
you were inspiring the audience with your vision. And
the comment that I'd heard was that was the most American pitch ever, of just getting up there, this is how it's going to be, and we got to go, and I'm I love that. But so won the thing. They're actually hosting the event in Chicago here in a couple months. So going to be attending there. Got a deal worked out to be a media partner and stuff on the conference, but no, really good to be over there with these VPs and bigwigs at some of the biggest ag and food companies in the world. But to get a European spin on it was interesting.
Let's talk next a little bit about the collaborations and what you've learned through collaboration with the big industry players in ag, and how you can leverage what you're doing with what they're doing to help accelerate the growth of your business. I mean, you don't have to talk about specific companies, but you can talk about general concepts of proximity and collaboration with the titans that can see the value in your vision and how you can help them and how you create shared value. So I think that's important to entrepreneurs to sort that piece out.
Yeah. So again, we are Soil Health Simplified. We deliver the how-to for regenerative ag. So our end user is a farmer, and we're trying to help 1 million of them. There's not enough hours in a day for me to direct to help 1 million farmers. And even to build scalable software solutions, how are you going to be disruptive enough to impact 1 million farmers? 20% of the global ag system. Not going to happen from Washington, Iowa. Facebook is good, but it ain't that good. And so instead, we've got to work with and build systems for the channel partners who already work with these 1 million farmers, who already have the networks, that already have scale, that already have brand awareness, who have technical people, legal people, all this stuff. And we can plug in through their channels to go and acquire customers better than us attempting to acquire a customer one by one. So we've been able to fit into that, especially because all these companies now have these sustainability initiatives, carbon initiatives, or whatever it may be. And in order for them to meet their carbon reductions or look within their scope 3 of their supply chain, which is the products basically went into their supply chain, in order for them to decarbonize or improve the sustainable impact of that, they've got to help their farmers to improve and help their farmers to be more sustainable. And they don't know how to do it. They don't know regenerative ag. They don't know how to teach anybody. They don't know what the metrics are to quantify. So they're hiring us to show them how it's done. And we have a system and we have processes now and a software that can scale. And we say, here's how you do it. Here's the process. It's visual and here's how it's got to be done. You go and do this checklist or whatever with your customer. We'll be the back end support. You're going to make some money on it. We're going to make some money on it. You're going to strengthen the relationship that you have with your customer. And we're going to utilize the metrics coming off of this to meet your sustainability goals. So the opportunity within that is trillions of dollars. The global wealth has said that we got to be carbon neutral by 2050. And in order to do it, you got to clean up food and ag, which is 24% of the global footprint. So if you're going to be carbon neutral, you got to clean up your supply chain, and that starts with the farmer. But it costs money. It's going to take some time, but we've got a business model to help companies to do it. So, but what will happen is that we'll get acquired, and I believe what will happen in this space is that there'll be a roll up of technologies and companies like ours and some of those that we partner with that can bring some of the technology into one company, one consortium of companies that can deliver a more full package offering to corporates and to their farmer clients to be able to really optimize these initiatives.
So as an entrepreneur, one of your challenges is how much do you scale and leverage through your channel partners and grow the business in terms of timing of when you exit and become part of a bigger roll-up or consolidation? Because the longer you wait, the more the value.
Yeah.
The longer you wait, I mean, there could be some unknown risk, but it's timing, and you're obviously thinking about this.
Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, you got to capitalize on the opportunities when they walk through the door. So if someone offers you a fantastic price, you might sell next quarter.
Yeah.
If they're not in the ballpark, they might wait 2 or 3 years, but then they'll pay 2 or 3 times more.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Or somebody else will come and railroad us, and we'll be gone.
Yeah. So how do you look at competitors and technologies that could leapfrog what you're doing? It could be a risk to your business model and your plan. Yeah,
it's been a really interesting deal. So at this point, there's not necessarily a direct competitor that I can point to and say, we've got to just beat them and we got to watch out for them because they're the ones coming after us. I don't necessarily have that. I've got groups that are kind of doing some of the stuff that we do. But basically, as we sit today, we are in a fairly unique spot and fairly ingrained in some of these initiatives. And in order to protect ourselves, I'm just trying to work with everybody. And by being with everybody, that's my moat, because I can't patent everything in software. I can't legally protect everything that we've got because it's software solutions. So it's not patentable. It's not legally protectable at that point. So my protection is by working with everybody and be so intertwined into their programs, they can't do it without me.
Yeah, then you start building critical mass of acres in the system and in the database. So, if you've got 70% of all the acres that are in a regenerative program today, you're a leader. So now as your partners bring in more 10,000 acres here, 5,000 here, 40,000 there, your database grows. That's right. That's just being the market leader by itself.
Yeah. So now we're looking at, need to get acquired at some point and be rolled into something so we can go beyond me and beyond, what we're doing here in small town Iowa. But in the meantime, acquiring those acres is slow, especially through these company programs, which are very slow because the companies got to develop their programs, then they got to go sell it to their farmers, they got to get them in. It takes a long, long time. It's not growing very quickly. 93% of farmers in the U.S. are aware of these initiatives, namely carbon initiatives.
Right.
93% of farmers are aware of these initiatives. Less than 3% have enrolled in one of these initiatives. So and not very many. They're not chomping at the bit.
How do you accelerate, or what accelerates the conversion of farmers into regenerative initiatives? Is it possible there will ever be a political mandate that says you have to do this?
I think that's actually a big threat to this, because there is a possibility that it could happen, and regulation is definitely going to speed up or slow down these initiatives here. Right now, the regulation and the dollars coming from the federal government and state government are more so trying to enable free market to do stuff by means of grants and cost share dollars and trying to put money at it without mandating or anything. The key thing, though, that's really needed in my viewpoint is that we need to have better metrics and tools that can show farmers what is their score as it exists today. What I mean by that is today, farmers' score and the scoreboard is yield. And I can see my score when I harvest because it's on the monitor. Right. It's right here, and I can see it when I go across, and I can see the score. And I've got a pretty good idea of how to score points.
So you see how many bushels of corn are coming out and going into the hopper.
That's right. And the more bushels, the better my score, the more I get paid. Because I get paid based on bushels.
Right.
And I know that where I did this nitrogen rate versus this one, well, this one worked out better on the scoreboard. I got more yield, so I need to do more of that. That kind of play. Until we can get to where we have a scoreboard and we show farmers how to create points for carbon or sustainability, until we get to that point, this is not going to happen.
Does TopSoil have that scoreboard, or will it have that scoreboard?
That's what I'm working on big time. So I was hoping to meet with my guy here today. It looks like we're going to meet tomorrow or the next day or so. That score, what I believe is going to happen here, is called carbon intensity. Corn today has a standard carbon intensity score of plus 35 grams of carbon equivalents per megajoule of energy. It's an ethanol standard. They do these kind of reporting stuff.
Right.
But today, they don't collect all the data, so they have to use the standard of plus 35. And any other industry can do it as well and convert it to their metric stuff. That's not what matters. But plus 35 is the thing to look at. Our farm is now the second farm in the state of Iowa, that I'm aware of at least, to have our score. We are minus 1.8. So the standard farm is plus 35.
So if you don't measure, you get assigned a value of plus 35.
Plus 35.
And eventually you're going to be held accountable to do something with that.
That's right. But whether the farmer be held accountable or the companies are going to be held accountable, and next year in Europe, they have to start reporting their scope 3 carbon emissions next year. We don't have that stuff here in the US. We don't report on our carbon emissions to the Securities Exchange. They've been talking about that, but today we don't. In Europe, they do. So in Europe, they have to start reporting not only their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, their direct emissions, but also there's scope 3, which is their supply chain, and that trickles down to the farmers. Mm-hmm. And if they don't have the real numbers, they have to use the standard of plus 35 or thereabout. And that's the number we'll use for today, plus 35. Our farm is minus 1.8, which in tonnage is about 1.8 tons per acre difference between those two.
Between a minus 1.8 and a 35?
And a plus 35. So in terms of
1.8 tons of carbon per acre.
Per acre per year. Yep. Now that minus 1.8 carbon negative, that is including everything. That's my fertilizer, my fuel, my energy usage, my LP, my natural cycling, everything. And we're minus 1.8. So offsetting our own carbon footprint plus a little extra. Yep. Huge opportunity. And what I'm getting at is get that number for every single farmer in America and show them that the better their score, the more they can get paid, and they will do it.
Well, especially if a plus 35 at some point causes a great penalty, and they're going to start charging you for your plus 35 because you're.
And that's why I know that this will work. So
what's the timing on that in this country?
Long time.
I mean 10 years, 20 years?
10 I think is probably realistic before there's any kind of penalty and stuff. But what will happen is, I don't know that it has to be a mandated penalty, but what I think the opportunity is, what I'm really pushing on, is get a farmer their number, like mine, minus 1.8. Now I can start shopping around and say, hey, I got 100,000 bushels of this corn that has a carbon intensity of minus 1.8. Does that mean anything to you? And how much you want to pay me to have this corn that's minus 1.8? And you get that story, and you get to blend this minus 1.8 corn with all the rest of your corn that's plus 35. And now, I didn't solve all your problems, but now the weighted average of all that corn is now plus 27. So it's not great, but it's better than the other guy when they go and sell.
So when Cargill buys it, do they get a carbon credit for the quality of the score with that corn that they buy?
No,
or how does that credit eventually play into?
I think this is going to be a different path. So today there's a carbon credit, which is a new asset on its own. Right. And then there's the corn that goes over here that has no carbon measurement to it. Just yellow number 2 corn, just like everybody else. The carbon credit goes over here. What I think will happen is that the number goes together, not based on carbon credits, but based on science-based target initiatives.
The carbon footprint of that specific corn in the field that it came out of?
That's right. So it's about lowering the carbon footprint of your supply chain and actually getting to being carbon negative or carbon neutral. So instead of Cargill now needing to go and buy carbon credits from somewhere, right, now they can do it within their supply chain. So it's carbon insetting, and it's scope 3 target reporting. And the value here is when I sell that grain, the carbon goes with it and it's done. It's not, did my carbon go over there and did my corn go over there and what's happened and did it get double counted? It's just done. And also now it's directly incentivized in your supply chain to have all that. And also, if Cargill is going to claim my carbon and my story, they have to make sure that I don't sell my carbon credit over here and sell my grain. They need it all
if in
together.
20 years Cargill has to be at a score of 0 or less on corn, when they buy it and they know that you're a negative 1.8, that's a positive.
Yep.
If you're a 5 or 10 or a 35, if you don't do it
You're
and you get assigned 35, your corn's probably less marketable because you got a high score, you got a 35.
That's right.
So the people that start doing this are going to be on the leading edge.
That's right.
Whenever this carbon plays out.
That's why I love it. It's starting right now.
So what, the Department of Ag would have some incentives in my mind by saying if you want crop insurance, you have to have a carbon score and a regenerative ag program. If you don't, we're not going to give you insurance, so you're going to pay twice as much, because the risk of a crop failure when you use regenerative with this organic matter, it holds water. Yeah. The crop's going to survive when the one next door might not, or you'll get 150 an acre versus nothing because of these practices that, I mean, they could say, you want insurance, you do this. And the farmer can decide, and that way they're not mandating it.
Yeah, I think over time, if
choice.
the federal government really wanted to do something, it would be in that route where they could say, hey, you've got to do X, Y, Z to be less of a risk to us if we're going to insure you. That would absolutely be their play if they wanted to do something. But I think it's still so institutionalized and stuff that fairly far away from doing that. So instead, it's going to be just like this CI scoring and stuff where it's not going to be a penalty for the people that are still 35, whether it be you aren't doing very good practices or you don't have the data to create your score and you just have to use the default. So in the meantime, it's going to be a premium for the folks who do have a good score and who do have the data to document it, because there's not that much of that grain. So they're going to need that, and people are going to want to buy that grain. They're still going to have to buy a lot of this plus 35 grain. And right now, they're probably not going to dock you because they still need the grain. They still need to buy the grain.
Right.
Because there's not enough of this low carbon grain they still need the corn. There's not enough corn out there. They still got to buy the corn. Whether it's good carbon intensity or not, they still need the corn. Until more and more people have low carbon grain, it becomes the norm. The premium comes down because it's now just the standard. And hopefully these farmers, of course, are more resilient, more productive, more profitable on their own,
right,
and don't need the premium as much anymore. It becomes the new standard, and it's a new plateau. It's a new standard. Then the folks that can't meet that standard get docked, just like we do today. Today we sell yellow number 2 corn at 56-pound test weight at 15.5% moisture. And if you are anything worse than that, you get docked. You don't get a premium for having great quality grain.
You just don't get docked.
Yeah, you just don't get docked. So it's going to be the same thing in the future. But like I said, probably a solid 10 years before any dockage is
Let me ask you this. If you have land that's got a score, a carbon intensity score, that you've had it for years, at some point, does the land become more valuable because you have it, because you have a negative score versus someone else who is at 35 because they don't do any of this?
There's probably some opportunity for that. I could see it in both ways. I could see it where it's got that low CI score, it's really functioning correctly, and therefore it's already set up for these premiums and you're good to go. But maybe that poor ground is going to be available for other outside incentives to help it to be improved. And if you know how to take it from a plus 35 to a 0, you could be extra incentivized to help to convert that land to being better and utilize cost share dollars or utilize additional money to make that conversion. So I could see it being either way.
Do you ever see a day where the big financial institutions that partner with the big farms start encouraging their customer base, their farmers, to start doing these things because they see the value and the risk if you're not a regenerative farmer and rain and gets more scarce and there's less groundwater and maybe at some point the government says we're going to reduce our crop insurance and our subsidies, the risk for people that just do the old-fashioned farming of catastrophic failures goes way up.
Yeah.
And, their partners may say that, we're not willing to invest in this risk long term. You need to, because these practices are proven, and it's almost common sense. Why don't you get with the program? It's
just a long ways to make that conversion, I think, because it's just such a small percentage of folks that are really doing that and have really, enough proof and enough of those case studies and stuff to really be able to have that. And because today they need the corn from wherever.
Well, that's true.
They just need the grain.
How much of the world's supply of corn has been impaired in the Ukraine with Russia blowing everything up?
No, it's not as much on the corn. It's wheat is what it's really impacted. But on the corn side, it's not as big of a driver there. But, it would be some, but it's just not. I don't know if that's what we're still seeing in the market or not. But I'm not an expert on that. But I think overall, it's just going to end up being there is some initial talks about getting this carbon intensity scoring and stuff. I was just talking with a buddy that works for one of the grain buy-in companies, one of the big dogs, and that what they've done is they've figured out their carbon intensity score for their area based on the normal practices and typical practices for their area, So maybe it's a little bit better than that plus 35, or but it's probably, say it's still that. What they're doing is they're paying just a small premium for anybody that is at that or better. So there's no dockage for being worse, but it's just a couple bucks an acre if you are at the average or better, based on some of your basic reporting. But it's year one of this program, just getting going, and but interesting to see that there is dollars starting to move for this type of initiative.
Well, this is exciting. Do you have anything else you'd like to share today with our audience?
I know we've gotten really deep into a lot of different stuff. It's been a lot of fun. If people stuck through all of this, kudos to them. This has been there's been a lot of stuff here, but really good info. More on our stuff is Continuum.ag is our website. I'm pretty well all over social media and stuff too. And my big thing is I need more groups that want to enable this to happen, that want to enable these carbon intensity initiatives to be a thing, and groups that have technologies that can help me to figure out my own carbon intensity score at a more accurate level, and that way we can scale it to the rest of our network. So that's my big program.
Well, this has been fantastic, Mitchell. I thank you so much for your time. Any of our audience that's interested in Continuum Ag, learning more, investing, has great ideas that may help Mitchell and his team in what they're doing, feel free to reach out to Mitchell. We'll have the email and their website in the podcast. And this is, Mitchell's a disruptor, and he's obviously passionate about it. And I've been working with him for a number of years, and I'm excited about what he's doing and the big impact that it has on humanity, and the problem that we face with food sustainability for the 8 billion people on the planet, and climate change, and the disruptive technologies are going to help us solve all of these problems. So Mitchell is just one of the many entrepreneurs that's making a difference and an impact. His goal is to impact 1 million farmers and 1 billion acres with regenerative agriculture. So to me, that's a massive transformational purpose and goal that's driving his moonshot. So, this is very exciting. And we'll probably tune back in about a year to see how you're doing and what the new developments are. Thanks for joining us on the AMPx Podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure not to miss future episodes, and please rate the show wherever you get your podcast. Thanks to our awesome production team, Lindsay Soderberg, social and digital marketing, Taylor Higgins, video production, and Seth Nielsen, marketing. See you next time.